Hello, you sickos. I did not write an intro for this video because A, I am lazy, and B, I think the title is pretty self-explanatory, so let's get into it. Is God Is follows sisters Racine and Anaya, who, as children, survived a horrific house fire set by their psychopathic father, leaving them both disfigured. Prompted by their mother, whom they initially thought died in the fire, the sisters set out on a quest for revenge. It seems like not a lot of people have heard of this movie. I saw a single trailer for this at the theater earlier this year and basically never heard about it again. So it really didn't get a lot of marketing, which is a shame because this is one of the best films I've seen all year. It's writer and director Alicia Harris's directorial debut, and it is based on her stage play of the same name. In my experience, it usually takes a while for a director to hone their voice, but I think it's fair to say that Harris has clearly found hers. She really knocked it out of the park on her first try, which is rare. This film is unrelentingly violent, brilliantly written, and features killer performances, specifically from leads Cara Young and Mallory Johnson. And I guarantee you will see a side of Sterling K. Brown that you have not seen before. He's really playing against type in this one. I urge you to check this out if you have not already done so. If you love a good revenge story, I think this one's for you. Kind of remind me of Kill Bill in a good way. I think Tarantino has maybe fallen off, but in this particular instance, I would say Tarantino-esque is a major compliment. Next up is They Will Kill You. In They Will Kill You, a young woman named Asia takes a job as a housekeeper at the Virgil, a New York City hotel that's occupied mostly by ultra-wealthy long-term tenants. Before her first night's over, Asia discovers the dark secrets her boss and the hotel's residents have been keeping. Speaking of violence, there's no shortage of blood and guts in They Will Kill You. And while the core story is solid, the script isn't as strong as I think it could have been. I found myself much more drawn to the well-choreographed action sequences, and of course lead actor Zazie Beetz' performance as well. Still, it's worth a watch if you're looking for something funny and campy to throw on. I did have a fun time with it. OBEX. Let's talk about OBEX. Written, directed, and starring Albert Birney, OBEX is a micro-budget indie film that follows Connor, an agoraphobic VHS collector and computer enthusiast, as well as his dog Sandy, in late 1980s Baltimore. Intrigued by an advertisement for a computer game called OBEX, Connor purchases it and plays it only to quickly lose interest, but the game isn't as simple as he thinks. Sandy is kidnapped by the game's villain, and Connor must leave the safety of his home in order to enter the game and save his little friend. Honestly, OBEX might just be the most wholesome film I've seen in years. It's truly an exercise in doing the most with what you have, which in this case wasn't much of a budget at all. Regardless, Birney gives us this thrilling yet tender story of a not-so-likely hero's journey. Also, Sandy, the dog, whose real name is Dorothy, completely steals the show. I would say this kind of reminded me of Eraserhead, yet, like I said, it's a little bit more, how shall I say, sentimental. It's kind of like a sentimental version of Eraserhead, I would say. Also, I think this film did what Black Mirror's Bandersnatch tried to do more successfully. I think it's a much more engrossing film. Next up is Steven Soderbergh's directorial debut, Sex, Lies, and Videotape. Unhappy housewife Anne's world is turned upside down when her husband John's college friend Graham saunters into town for a visit. Previously a listless drifter, Graham decides to stay put and rent an apartment in town. Soon after, Anne discovers Graham's secret, and this turns out to be a catalyst in her own life that forever alters her closest relationships. It's kind of hard talking about this one without spoiling anything, so just trust me when I say if you haven't seen it before, you should check it out. With an absolutely stacked cast, pre-Crash James Spader, a young Sandy Cohen, I've got to say, this might be one of my favorite Steven Soderbergh movies to date. Another example of a director knocking it out of the park on their first attempt. The work is firmly character-driven, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat, wondering when the other shoe is going to drop. since there's been so much talk recently of young people directing critically acclaimed films. Here's a fun fact. At the ripe old age of 26, Soderbergh won the Palme d'Or, or however the fuck you pronounce that, at the 1989 Cannes Film Festival for this very film. Next up is how to get ahead in advertising. Sick of being inundated with online ads? Then boy, oh boy, do I have the movie for you. How to Get Ahead in Advertising's protagonist, Dennis Bagley, is a successful advertising executive, aka an asshole, until one day he has a nervous breakdown over a pimple cream campaign. As Dennis becomes manic and begins to question the ethics of the entire advertising industry, not to mention his part in creating this propaganda, he sprouts a talking boil on his right shoulder that tries to dissuade him from this new worldview. Eventually, Dennis decides to have the boil removed, but unfortunately for him, it's a little too late for that. I'd love to pick director Bruce Robinson's brain about the current state of advertising. If he felt this way in 1989, then surely he's having his own nervous breakdown whenever he tries to watch a YouTube video or literally access any website. The satirical nature of How to Get Ahead in Advertising is so refreshingly honest, and I think it's fair to say its message resonates deeply in 2026, a time in which it's increasingly impossible to watch a paid streaming service without a million ads or fill up your gas tank without a commercial streaming at you. When you think about it, it's kind of crazy most of us haven't had our own Dennis Bagley level breakdowns. Mine's coming. It's coming soon enough. On a related note, next up is Network. In 1976's Network, legacy anchorman Howard Beale discovers the Union Broadcasting System's president is going to force him to retire because of declining ratings. So what does Howard do exactly? Well, he tells his audience that he's going to off himself in a newscast. After he's talked down, Howard promises to apologize, but instead he goes on an unhinged rant, which causes ratings to soar and his career to take a little detour on a much different and more lucrative path. Network is kind of hard to describe in the abstract. On one hand, it's clearly a satire of the media ecosystem that existed at the time, yet it feels strangely prescient in relation to contemporary trends as well. The real kicker here is that the film is also deeply insightful with respect to capitalism's ability to absorb and co-opt critical voices, such as the leftist activists depicted in this film. Hey, wait a minute. I'm in this tweet, and I don't like it. Turning to a more optimistic film, Boots Riley released his latest absurdist comedy called I Love Boosters earlier this year. A collective of shoplifters, or boosters as they are called, known as the Velvet Gang, target a San Francisco Bay Area chain clothing store called Metro Designers and resell the clothing at reasonable prices to their community. When Metro Designers' classist and racist founder Christy Smith attempts to stop them, the Velvet Gang fight back in a very unexpected way for better pay and safer workplace conditions for Metro Designer employees. As with any Boots Riley film, I Love Boosters is over the top and highly stylized, but its aesthetics don't overshadow the core message. While this wasn't my favorite film of his, I thought the ending was a little too optimistic in my view. I did enjoy my experience. We do get some great performances as well as hilarious visuals like a fully occupied sideways building and a giant ball of ever-expanding junk rolling around the city. Of course, there's also an underworld full of non-humans pulling capitalism's metaphorical strings and a militant police force armed with tanks, which probably isn't much of an exaggeration at this point. Of course, the gun that heightens the contradictions or lowers the contradictions at will is pretty funny too. More importantly, I Love Boosters is a much needed dose of hope that I think we could all use. Oh, and I think you guys will love the very random cameo towards the end of this movie. I won't spoil anything if you haven't seen it. And the final film on my list today is Castration movie Anthology 1, Traps. This is the first installment in a series of films called Castration Movie, all written, directed, and starring Louis Weird. That's right, folks, a triple threat. So Anthology 1 called Traps, is told in 2 chapters. The first, titled Chapter 1, Incel Superman, follows a self-destructive production assistant named Turner, a guy who's falling deeper and deeper into reactionary ideology over the course of his narrative arc. In Chapter 2, Traps Swan Princess, we follow Michaela, also known as Traps, a trans sex worker from Vancouver who's really just trying to get by and have some fun every once in a while. She's also mentoring a friend who recently came out as trans, and to top it off, she's considering the possibility of motherhood as well. Much of the film explores the trans experience in a straightforward, pretty candid way, weaving together the mundane minutia of everyday life and the societal pressures trans people face every day. And with a runtime of 4.5 hours, I do recommend watching this in installments. You can watch the first chapter. That's what we did. We watched the first chapter one night and the second chapter the following night. But honestly, it doesn't feel as long as you would think. Like, from minute 1, I fully felt immersed. It has a very lived-in feel, and I suspect that's because it was a very DIY production, as Weird describes in her Substack post about the film. Apparently, they rarely ask for permission at most shooting locations, often having the actors just show up and shoot a scene. Sounds like kind of a stressful way to make a movie, but I'd say the end result is worth it. We've reached the end, but I have 2 honorable mentions, two movies I just watched a couple weeks ago. I Blame Society and Anne at 13,000 Feet. Both films are just about, badass women just vibing and doing their thing, I guess. You'll see what I mean if you watch the films. All right, well, that's all I got for you. If you enjoy my videos, you can maybe consider supporting me on a monthly basis at patreon.com/Nightmare Masterclass, or of course, you can click the join button below. Thank you for watching, and have a good night.